last time, when we were looking at Enter Electro, I mentioned that Vicarious Visions didn't have the full attention or financial support from Activision to work on a sequel to Spider-Man 2000 because all of that was being funneled towards a different Spider-Man game. Now, creating a direct sequel to a successful game like 2000 might have seemed appealing, but there was something coming around the corner that no developer from the time period could ignore.
Sam Raimi of the Evil Dead fame was directing a major movie about the Spider-Man character, and back in those days, it was basically law that any blockbuster film that came out needed to have a video game adaptation on the ready, especially if that movie was about a superhero. Seeing as Activision owned the video game distribution rights to the character, they were given the task of creating the game. Neversoft was a bit busy working on the continuing evolution of the Tony Hawk Pro Skater series, but they weren't the only team to work on Spider-Man 2000, as Treyarch was a part of the process as well. So, Activision acquired the Treyarch studio, and the Spider-Man video game adaptation was made.
Alright, so this is where the formatting for these reviews is going to be shifting just a little bit. We have a lot of Spider-Man games to get through and not a ton of time to do it if we want to get these all done in time for the new game coming out in September. So, I'm going to be simplifying things just a little bit. The gameplay analysis is also going to be there, but I am going to be taking it a little easier on the story stuff. That stuff is also important, so I'll be addressing all the bigger plot elements, so, spoilers still ahead, all of that. But I'm not going to be doing it play-by-play like I did before.
With all of that said, let's jump on in. As you can imagine, the basics behind the story follow the general plot of the film it's based on. The story begins with Peter Parker very quickly explaining that he has spider powers and he tried to use them to get money at a wrestling arena. After being cheated by the owner of the establishment, he decides to stand on the sidelines as the swindler gets robbed, only to find out that his Uncle Ben was murdered the same exact night. Fueled by rage and guilt that he argued with the sweet old man the last time they saw each other, Peter gears up his wrestling suit and attempts to hunt down Uncle Ben's killer. Here on the rooftops of Manhattan, we see some very familiar mechanics. Treyarch carried over a lot of aspects of Spider-Man 2000 into this game, especially where the web powers are concerned, but combat has been upgraded just a bit. Over time, you can unlock new combos for ground combat, which helps rid encounters with enemies of their tedium a bit. Still, Spidey looks a little stiff in his movements, but at least he's more versatile now than he's been before. Now, the rooftops that you explore actually showcase one of the bigger changes brought to the gameplay, and that would revolve around web swinging. Spider-Man isn't regulated to a simple 2 threads of webbing anymore. No, they're actually kind of unlimited. Take off into the air and just start swinging away for as long as you like. For a more elegant swing and to cover ground a bit faster, you can hold the swing button down a bit and pick up speed, which looks a bit better than whatever's going on with this animation here. We also have web zipping. Now this was present before in Spider-Man 2000, but it's a bit more refined here and you can use it in more locations. It's really useful when you want to just crawl up walls a bit faster. What's a bit silly though is the broken laws of physics going on. It doesn't matter how high up above the buildings in New York City you are, your webs will always work. I guess the end of Spidey's webs are just hanging off my suspended disbelief or something. Not unlike Spider-Man 2000 is the inability to travel on the ground and city-based levels. I can understand this to a degree since the levels are always designed physically and narratively to give Spider-Man an excuse to jump back into the desired location if he gets too far away from his objective. The setup here is great. Peter is new to this whole Spider-Man thing and really isn't into the whole hero business yet, so using this time to get the player acquainted with the gameplay makes a lot of sense. Once you've gotten the swinging and punching down, Peter catches the thug he suspects is connected to Uncle Ben's killer and tries to fish a location out of the guy.
A carjacker killed an old man earlier today. The killer's a skull. Where is he?
I can't tell you. He killed me.
What makes you think I won't?
By following the thug's directions, you end up in a warehouse that brings a bit of stealth into the mix. By sticking to the shadows, Spider-Man can become essentially invisible, and this can help in either sneaking past enemies or in avoiding encounters with large groups of enemies at a time. By using what you've learned, you should have no trouble making it through the hideout and facing off against Uncle Ben's killer, who's revealed to be the man that Peter let go at the wrestling arena. The killer freaks out and accidentally offs himself, leaving Peter to reflect on everything that's happened, opening his eyes to the lesson Uncle Ben was trying to teach him the last time they saw each other. With great power comes great responsibility, and seeing the consequences of his passivity and selfishness, Peter decides to embrace his identity as Spider-Man and use his incredible abilities to serve as a benefit to the world. Okay, now this is probably stuff that most of you are already familiar with, but I decided to go ahead and address it for 2 reasons. One, this is the first time a Spider-Man game has addressed the origin story of the character, and secondly, because this is the last time in this marathon we're gonna see it done. Or at least done well. We'll get to that. The rest of the game follows Spider-Man as he spends his time trying to save people and stop crimes, but is being targeted by Oscorp. Norman Osborn states that the company is responsible for completing a human-enhancing serum that he thinks Spider-Man's complex DNA could be the key to. The company sends out drones to hunt down the Spider, and so our hero is forced to juggle defending himself from drones coming after him, hunting down both the Shocker and the Vulture after a robbery, and trying to calm down the Scorpion, who's also being hunted by Oscorp and seems to have no idea what's going on. Actually, we're not given a backstory for Scorpion in this game. I'm not really sure how he ended up in this Scorpion suit or how he ended up with arachnid DNA in his system, but I'm assuming that this detail was just meant to come up in a later game. After a long string of failures, Oscorp's financiers lose faith in the company, and the board fires Osborn. Caught in a fit of desperation, he uses the incomplete serum on himself and loses a part of his mind to what becomes the Green Goblin persona, an insane murderer who gets revenge on the board that fired him and may or may not get some innocent people in danger in the process. And in trying to keep these events in line with the movie, Mary Jane and Harry, two of Peter's best friends that seem to be going through some relationship troubles, are also just kind of here. They were mentioned really quickly in the earlier part of the game, and now Mary Jane has become the love interest in distress, and Harry becomes completely unimportant from here on out. Okay, sort of, but more on that later. After saving Mary Jane and chasing down the Goblin, Spider-Man tries to fight the Psycho, who constantly does his best to convince our hero that success is the right of the powerful, and that he should join him in villainy, which Spider-Man obviously turns down. Spider-Man rushes to disarm a string of explosives that the Maniac set, Greenie comes back, and the wall crawler is forced to retreat. After discovering that Oscorp created the tech Green Goblin uses, Spider-Man decides to search the Oscorp labs for answers, and oh boy, does this take a while. Yeah, this is basically the equivalent of the sewers from Spider-Man 2000. It doesn't take as long as those levels, but it is still longer than I think it needed to be, and it does retread on some areas that didn't need retreading. There's a lot of sneaking, checking out cool screensavers on staff computers, breaking into labs, getting chased by robots, dismantling dangerous chemical mixtures, and... Are you kidding me?
Colonel, this is Spider Snake. I've infiltrated Oscorp and located their metal gear. That thing's the size of Rhode Island and it doesn't look too friendly.
After finding Osborn's office, Spidey discovers that the Goblin has been spying on him and figured out that there was a connection between him and Mary Jane. So Gobby kidnaps the redhead, leading to one last chase, one last rescue, and one last fight, which, like the other boss fights in this game, basically amounts to avoiding the enemy and bopping him on the head a few times when it's convenient. Finally, Spider-Man gets the villain on his knees and discovers that Norman was the Goblin the whole time. Trying to take advantage of Peter's confusion, Goblin sends his glider to kill the webhead, but Spider Sense is a thing and Spider-Man jumps out of the way, leading the glider to kill its owner instead. The day is saved, the Goblin is dead, Mary Jane and Spider-Man have themselves a little smooch, and the main character of our tale calls the player a nerd.
Looks like you're done now. Go outside and play.
This is one of the better stories told so far, but it does stumble in places. I like seeing Peter learn how to take some responsibility and go from a dark, vengeful man to a protective hero. I like seeing him being challenged by his villain, who is struggling with his own power and responsibility lesson that he never learns, and seeing some other villains fit into the Raimiverse is fun, but there are still things that don't work quite as well as they should. Goblin's character is touched on, but never really developed. Harry and Mary Jane aren't exactly introduced all that well, and the Oscorp section really does drag on for too long. One thing worth mentioning is that in the Xbox version of the game, there's an additional mission revolving around Kraven the Hunter. That's a cool idea, and I really do like that character, but that's kind of where my input on the mission ends, because I don't have the Xbox version of the game and have never experienced it for myself. But I thought I would at least mention it because Lord knows somebody else will if I forget. What I can comment on though is the presentation of the game. Instead of the more cartooning or comic booky style of the first games, the more cinematic presentation was chosen to fit the motif of the film, and I think it holds up pretty well. The environments stand out well, and I like how it can go from these really grimy, messy locations to the prettier looking laboratories or city landscapes. The character models are nice too, and I think that the characters are animated rather well. Unfortunately, the lip syncing in the game looks kinda silly. That is, at least for in-engine scenes. In the pre-rendered cutscenes, everything holds up much better, and the animations, lip syncing, and character models hold up very, very well. What makes all of this even better is the music, which fully embraces the cinematic tone of the film and creates a wonderful, heroic feeling for each and every level. The track that plays in the first few levels, Search for Justice, is still one of my favorite songs associated with the character. And then there's voice acting. Most of it works really well. Solid performances all around, especially from my boy, Willem Dafoe. Man, his voice can just bring magic to
any role.
Dr. Strom, either prepare the chamber or your resignation. Either way, I'm testing the serum now.
Still, I think we all know who the real best performances were in this game. And those would be the random thugs that you fight in the first few levels.
Circus in town? Hey, you! He doesn't look so tough. Looks like the freak wants to play. What's with the getup, chump?
What doesn't work so well for me is Tobey Maguire. Look, I love the guy, and I think that he was great in the Spider-Man films, but some of these lines just sound so forced.
No problem. Grab hold of a rogue balloon anytime. Rescuing damsels is my specialty.
What helps round things out, though, is all the extra content. There aren't a ton of alternate costumes, although there are a few you can access through cheat codes, but what is available is some training modes, this hilarious little bowling minigame, but the most impressive inclusion is the ability to play as the Green Goblin. If you complete the game at a certain difficulty, you can unlock the ability to play the game again, but this time as Harry Osborn, who's trying to discover the mystery behind his father becoming the previous Goblin. This isn't just a reskin of Spider-Man either. No, this is a fully functional Green Goblin. From the glider with darts and bullets, the razor bats, and I didn't even know this was one of his powers. I love unlockable content like this, and I'd love to see something like this return in a future Spider-Man game. It's not often that you get to play as his villains.
So, do I recommend Spider-Man the movie, the game? Absolutely.
Yeah, it's simple and short, but you know what else it is? It's fun. Outside of a couple of missions that last a bit too long, the pacing of the game is pretty solid and the mechanics have been refined from previous games into an experience that does a good job at keeping the upbeat and fun sense of adventure and heroism that stands as a neat adaptation of the first Spider-Man film. So yeah, I'd say pick it up and give it a shot.
But we are just getting started. There's still a few more movie games to cover, and I know of a few people who are looking forward to the next review in particular. So, in the next episode, we're going to be taking a look at Spider-Man 2. Thanks again for watching, everybody. See you next mission.